Welcome to video 9, the series Mirror, 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 Mirror on the Wall. If you have not seen another video series that I did entitled Reprogram Serpent Egg, it's 50 videos long, it's on the playlist, all of the videos are in order. I would recommend that you watch it. And if you've been following the videos up to this point so far, you're going to increase your sight and at the same time increase your understanding of what's to come, what I'm going to share next. We're going to talk about this here and there as this video series moves forward, at least this diagram, as it's related to everything that we've talked about thus far. I'd like you to look here at the beginning, at least where we see the seeding event comes into our world, and then in essence initiates this symbol here, which as you can see is the I, the ego, and of course that singular seeded cell, which we have already talked about. And we're going to continue to talk about, and you will see that's what's being talked about right here. But before we get to that, let us think about the aspect of the philosophy of the mirror as a way to achieve one's divinity. It's the entire foundation of this deception is the mirror, at least from man's perspective as he gazes into it and is deceived. Now we have to realize who has offered this particular mode or method for man or mortals to become gods. It relates all the way back to the fallen, of course, the fallen sons of God, as they were influenced by the fallen prince of this world, who was further deceived by Satan and then Lucifer above him. But in this perspective, we're going to basically be speaking about the planetary prince himself, aka the devil, Apollyon, Leviathan, Enki, Horus, Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, or even good old King Arthur, just depending on what relative culture you're viewing all this from, because each culture has done its best to encode these mysteries into their own philosophies in a personal manner. Hence, of course, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. In essence, the King Arthur character is the Masonic individual from this ancient English point of view, if you would. Okay? And this is where we enter into the camel Lot, and this is what will connect back to Lot's wife that is looking back. And of course we know where she's looking back to, and that's going to be the dark side of the moon, because that's really where the seat of spiritual Babylon is, all of that high wickedness, that spiritual wickedness in high places. So in reference, we understand the admonishment, don't look back. Of course they have deluded themselves into thinking that that was here at this earth. Don't look back, as they're lifted up to their Zion, they're lifted up to their Shinar, they're lifted up to their secret moon base. In essence, they're saying, okay, the scriptures are saying, don't look back, we got this, we're just right there. But they don't really realize that they are going to what they're looking back to. As they seek to destroy this supposed material corruption here, they're going to the very place where it has been born from, where it has been incubated, nurtured, designed, and devised. Plain and simple, the high hand of Ephraim, who has basically carried out this great work so diligently to bring really himself to this point to become what he believes as God. But in all actuality, we know it's for that individual right there to turn himself into a material form, being seen as God. So the mirror, really, you can find it in ancient history. Let's take the Egyptian pyramids, the Giza necropolis, if you will. An necropolis, in essence, is a major cemetery complex, which, believe it or not, as above, so to below. There's a there's a remnant of the ancient Egyptian civilization here. Well, the continuance of that civilization is on the dark side of the moon. So we see the Giza necropolis basically being defined as a great cemetery. Well, let's think about what I've already declared. This place also from another perspective, another angle of sight, but yet still looking at the same thing. It turns into their field of dreams. We know that from the coded movie with Kevin Costner, Ray, all the corn, build it, and they will come. Right? And then we know that the baseball, in essence, the baseball field is in the shape of a diamond, shine on you crazy diamonds type of thing. So if it's the field of dreams, we've got to think about something that that is in absolute relativity to ancient Israel in their plan of destroying the validity of Jesus Christ, and even their plan to bring him to the cross of crucifixion. Once Judas had basically sold Jesus Christ into crucifixion for 30 pieces of silver, the high priest of Israel then used that same silver to buy a particular portion of land. Now, it just wasn't any portion of land. It so happened to be known as the Potter's Field, which just so happened to be a cemetery, a necropolis in its own right. Now, you have to kind of realize that it's called the Potter's Field, and then we've already shown, in essence, this reality of the true translation of the parable of the wheat and the tares. We know that these supposed tares believe themselves to be this wheat that's going to be gathered into this great barn. In essence, every field has itself a barn to receive that which it's produced in the time of harvest. So this field of dreams now turns into the potter's field, which has been secured by what? By mammon, by money, by riches, material wealth. Once again, that deception of material Babylon. So they are going once again to a necropolis, to a graveyard that they believe is some sort of great city. But in all actuality, it's the very tombstone of their future identity if they themselves don't wake up from this field of dreams. And it's so easily understood. You can even compare it to the movie Silver Surfer, that reference of who is riding that wave of silver. Okay, and we know that the silver now is an essence of securing the potter's field, securing this destination or this location for this special elect, the special select. These people that see themselves as the bride. And they see themselves as the bride in connection with a meteor or an asteroid. Would that not be the very same thing that was considered in ancient Egypt as the Bin stone, associated with Zep-Tepi the first time, right? And that this stone was in essence an iron meteorite, right? An iron meteorite. Now, is not the alchemical symbol for man, the alchemical symbol for man is the very same alchemical symbol for iron? That's right. That's right. Now you got to think about the Bin stone. If you don't know what the Bin stone is, it had a great temple erect around it in ancient times, the oldest of ancient Egypt. And this temple was considered to be built on a great mound that was also called the High Sand. And of course, this temple is further dedicated to Osiris, aka Orion. And now you can begin to see why all of this connection with Orion and this seeding with the daughters of men is intrinsically related to iron. So furthermore, the Bin is in reference of some sort of pyramidal-shaped ironite meteorite or asteroid that has fallen from the heavens. And it was further erected upon a pillar, which, if I remember correctly, would be the Innu, I-N-N-U, In other words, that would be the phallic shaft, and then the bin would be the head. As I said, that the obelisk form, the pillar is called the Inu, Innu, and then the bin would be the head of the phallus or the head of the penis that sits atop it, that now is being described even in ancient times as something to do with a fallen star from heaven that is associated with iron. So this would be the knowledge, in essence, or where the knowledge comes from. What is associated with this great knowledge being these ones of Orion, or more importantly, these ones of iron that fell. Okay? So now you can begin to see how so much of this is relative to a sexual seeding or a sexual act, the birth of, in essence, that now translates into our modern times as a woman in travail. This woman that is chosen, in symbol, this femininity that is chosen, this apple as the symbol for knowledge, in which we really know that the apple is a term associated with another scientific term for embryo that is called morula. Morula. You could pronounce it morula, or I'll pronounce it moo, as in moo cow. Moo, ruler. That would be the great cow or the great golden calf, that great bull, ruler. So the apple in scientific terms, even to this day, is symbolic for an embryo. Not just any embryo, but the first stage of embryonic growth for any biological entity, animal or vegetable. Goes through a stage known as the torus, and then this torus stage, now let's think Taurus with bull, and then this stage with the torus for the embryo that is called a morula, in which they say is shaped and even looks like an apple. So now we see that the apple itself, at least in academic terms to this day, is associated with the teacher's desk, and that you would consider the apple the symbol for knowledge in the sense of education. Or is it in the sense of head-dication? Not necessarily education, but head-dication. And then now we see that the knowledge was really the mask for the temptation for the apple to be taken, and that the real root for the offerance of the apple is to create the embryo, and which is what this is all about, for the fallen prince himself to come into the material world. So you can probably find out more about the morula and everything associated with it if you review the series Reprogram Serpent Egg. All right, now let's just take a look here at something that begins to develop that was not planned but yet is still so incredibly there. Think about the symbol for fertility, which is almost always in relationship to rabbits. And then we know that this was even connected in the end of the movie Night of the Comet. Okay, that movie about a comet that comes by and destroys a great portion of the human populace, even turns them to dust. Now we see that at the end of the movie, we see Regina, in other words, the regener, as in genes, chromosomes, DNA, as in creating a new stock exchange on this planet. She is symbolized at the end of the movie with rabbits, and even the inverted triangle of which you see here is made. Now let's think about the symbol for the Playboy bunny, with that singular dot for the eye, and the rabbit is turned sideways in a profile with his two ears curiously in this shape here. And there's your symbol for the Playboy bunny right there. Once again, the two fertility symbols, the womb. In essence now, Mother Earth, is the earth not considered the mother, This is what's going to further relate us up to blaspheming the Holy Ghost in the fullness of a higher reflection, meaning that they're blasting the earth, the mother, the infinite spirit from the moon, in which this sin is unforgivable. And then it goes all the way back to the atomic scale of the atom as they seek to blast it to create anti-atoms. In other words, dark matter, matter that will neither reflect, absorb, or emit light, if you will. Of course, that has everything to do with the creation of the fallen prince's material body out of cloned DNA from ancient serpent kings of our distant past. So there you have your Playboy bunny that begins to evolve or manifest in essence of the default of the truth. And we see that the history itself, once viewed correctly, will reveal what the truth is every time. So now, basically what I said to you is really in preparation for you to understand further. You know, I don't know if I got off track here, but as I started talking about the mirroring of how in ancient mystery religion philosophies, the actual formula or the equation or the ritual to become God, at least for a mortal, from his perspective, is to mirror the sky from above. As above, so too below. And then within this temple, architecture is encoded esoterically through formulas and equations based upon numerology. In proportion in this architecture is the very ritual formula to enact out for these mortals, these learned initiates, these adepts that can go down into any sky. In other words, relative to precession, which is going to be relative to this symbol here, that if you don't know that where it really comes from is the earth being knocked in the past. Knocked in the past. So this would be the true northern ecliptic pole, and then this would be the celestial ecliptic pole that revolves around it, that is relative to that earth being tilted on a 23-degree tilt in its axis from being knocked violently in the past. Almost in essence, imagine a caveman with a club, that special club that you're supposed to belong to make life easier, right? That knocks the woman over the head and then drags her away, in essence, to procreate with her. So the earth was knocked in the past, which creates the 23-degree tilt, which in essence creates the 23-degree enigma that now basically manifests itself in the eyes of the blind as the sacred feminine, in which the females give up 2/3 more genetic material to the offspring than the male. And this is why to this guy here, that angel of Orion, who is upside down with his symbolism for the SS, in which you will soon see, most likely in this video series, is seeking to bring this temptation about as the way for himself to become God. So these ancient cultures, the Giza necropolis, once again, is mirroring the constellation of Orion. We go over to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. It is mirroring the constellations of Draconis and others. And of course, this would be the heart of Draconis right here, because Draconis occupies the northern volt of the sky, and that the northern ecliptic pole in which the celestial wobbling pole is revolving around to make the symbol of the seated cell, to make the symbol of the darkened pupil of the eye, to make the symbol of the ego, which sees itself as the center of all things, just as this fallen prince has deluded the world into believing. All of this is relative to precession, in which the action of the earth has been curtailed or retarded by a solar intruder of our distant past that is, in essence, instigated retrograde motion into our system solar that we experience now, which has created many astronomical disturbances that are now seen in light of the zodiac as the truth of God, when in all actuality they're a direct result of another intruder into the system, and which I'll be able to completely lay out for you without a doubt, as long as I can maintain your attention to see what's going on here. So, you know, all of the ancient temples of the world are basically mirror images of constellational philosophies and mysteries that the adept, the learned, the kings of the earth sought to replicate here as a way to obtain their quest for immortality. It's again the mirror. It's the mirror on the bigger scale. And then you see it being shown to you from micro to macro here in this video series as the very way that they've been tricked. As they've been tricked, as you know, rabbits are associated with trickery that are, in essence, performed by magicians or magi that seek to pull them out of some sort of black hat that, in essence, could be seen. So what I said, in essence, it's that we know who is seeking to pull rabbits out of hats, even from ancient times. It goes back to the Magi. Now, in modern times, we see the magician symbolically still pulling that white rabbit from that darkened hole of that black hat. In other words, the rabbit hole. And that's what you're looking at right here. You're looking at the rabbit hole. So, real quickly here, let's just basically talk one more time about what you're seeing here with this symbolism here. You're looking at the sacred tree of Sephiroth, of the shadow mystic Jewish Cabala. In Cabala, the sacred tree of Sephiroth is claimed to represent the cosmos, including God, male, his Shekinah, the goddess female, and the kingdom of Zion. As shown here, the foundation of all things is the male genitals, or the sex generative process. And then that information will be pulled from this source here. Okay? So, in all reality, this is exactly what we're talking about. As you know, that the moon is Zion, and that if you were to research the most earliest rendering for the definition Zion, you find out that it means dry place. Dry place. Now, you are going to see what I'm going to show you here, the very same angles. The very same angles that we've been showing you the whole time. And you've already seen me show it to you in the other video so far of this series. And as you see, the angle is showing you correctly that they're going to the moon. This would be that white beauty, in other words, that Jeshurun column, foundation on earth. We see that the black beast foundation is not upon the earth, if you remember correctly from the past videos. And then we see that this line of sight for the bride. For the bride, right? Aren't we talking about the bride? Right there. That word on the left of the circle, bride. Okay? Bride. There's the female figure. Underneath it says Zion Kingdom, in reference to queen. Now, if we were to follow this all the way up here, there we see that great queen, in which you should understand now with Ishtar being described as the queen of heaven. And as you can see, royal arch of heaven. And then now we see where this queen, okay, in essence this harlot, this black widow, is planning on going. But yet she represents a male and a feminine grouping. It's not just the female identities that are being taken up, but yet we see the masculine identities are hiding behind the feminine symbolism of this great queen of heaven. In essence, they're all mama's boys, are they not? Because we have the Ma sons, the Mu sons, that's the cow sons, which are the great mothers. That's what Nekbet means, great white cow, great white mother. That's what Ishtar means, the great white cow, in essence, the great mother. And then those of you who don't know, this would be Nekbet here. And at the same time, this would be Nekbet here. Right there, because this comes from the word Nesher, in which Nesher is interchangeable for vulture and eagle. And as you see, there's the mam on being lifted up. In essence, that's that same angle now to that moon location that is shrouded in mystery. Almost notice those little cotton balls that look like they're all around it. And then go watch that video by the band Capital Cities with their title song Safe and Sound, all about them going somewhere, being lifted up. Notice those little cotton balls dancing around with smiley faces in that video. This is where they pull those cotton balls from right there. They're not slick. They're not slick at all. So there is your neck bet right there. There is this great feminine presence and assemblage of lifting up in protection, this royal descendancy, and even that pharaoh himself, in which we know is going to be that persona of Enki, which would be in reference to ancient Sumerian, but as we move forward into ancient Egyptian, he becomes Horus, the son of the sun, the darkened right eye, which you should all understand is the moon. So, in essence, guys, what you have right here is a cellular diagram. The great Jewish Cabala, the great knowledge of Jewish mysticism, is nothing more than a esoteric delusion of the creation of a normal somatic cell in a sex act. That's exactly what you see right there. This is a diagram of a somatic cell as it goes through the journey of a union between male and female, and then eventuates through the sexual process, and then eventually forms itself into another normal cell of 46 chromosomes. As I've said before in the poem type song that I did for a video entitled R.I.P, basically my greatest fan, the rabbits that follow me. And they follow me hopping along everywhere I go, but yet they're unable to keep up. Basically, they can only stay in the shadow. So as you see, when I basically did that video about R.I.P, and then of course the rhyme that goes with it, you should go back and listen much closer again. And then now what you should see here, why I even chose the diagram of a somatic cell, is because it represents the symbolism for fertility. It gives you the symbolism for the rabbit right here in front of your face, with the big rabbit ears here, and as we go down to the face of the rabbit and down to the tip of his nose. There is your rabbit right there. So we'll talk more about this here. I don't want to make the video too long, but I want you to, at least at this point, go ahead and disclude from the symbolage of everything you see here, this portion here, because in essence that takes place in the unseen realm, etheric dimensions, the spiritual abode, the unseen realm, however you would like to term it. Now, these would be the energies that are going into these portions as they're coming into the physicality, to be born as a physical creation into the material world. This is where Led Zeppelin has given you that hint in through the outdoor, because this would be the outdoor. But somebody is seeking to come in through this outdoor. And we know who that is. That represents the fallen prince of this world. Okay? So if you were to just get rid of this portion here and see what is now seen in our material world, it is exactly what you see in this diagram of the somatic cell. Exactly. Just simply follow these three here to this here, follow these three here to this here, and then these two here, exactly in the same perspective as you will see right there. Now, how many people do you think have their jaws dropped to the floor right now? And then at the same time, how many people do you think are scrambling to contort this information right here to still make it appear that these people are being taught the right thing? And that everything that I said, that this great work is nothing more than a way to tempt mankind to perform these actions to bring this fallen one into his physical presence. And that everything that you hear about the rabbit hole, okay, it's right here. This is your rabbit hole, okay? This is your beetle, in which the Beatles, has basically named their band off of this knowledge here. And I'll show you how this forms the beetle. I'll show you how this forms the fox. You've seen how it forms the rabbit. You understand the hole. Soon you're going to understand the candle. And how they're lighting this candle as it's described in Luke chapter 11, verse 33. I described how they are lighting that candle and taking it to the secret place. The secret place is the dark side of the moon. That would be Luke chapter 11, verse 33. Okay, and this is the reference of that, how they're lighting that candle, how they're bringing this God particle into his dark matter. And then in reference now, the fractal fulfills is being brought to the dark side of the moon. In other words, by the pupils of darkness, that is that blinded right eye. It believes itself to be the left, entertaining the right portion of the hemisphere of the brain, but in all actuality, as we know, looking in the mirror by default has put them into the diluted left-hand portion of the backward materialness of everything. So there you have it, friends. And let's not make no mistake about the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. That this code with the 22-letter Hebrew alphabet is also, in perspective, how to fulfill this cellular manipulation to bring about the birth, as we know, as Jesus Christ and the other correct seers have prophesied that it will be a woman in travail, that this will not be a pleasant birth for this woman. Keep in mind, we're not the woman. We're not the one claiming the bride of this man-child, okay, because our God does not come into physical form. Again, he fulfilled that task when he returns in all of his spiritual glory. As we know, he disposes of this great work that was done by the very hands of Israel itself. It says that they have actually built this golden calf with their own hands. Okay? So we'll talk about this further, and you will understand about, once again, the enigmatic 44 as it shows up within the cellular scheme of creation. And that you will understand this in perspective for cloning, and that what they're going to actually do is skip this portion here of bringing the masculine and the feminine together, or in essence his being through a masculine or a feminine and a masculine sex act. They're not going to bring him through this sex act. He's not going to come through a normal procreation. He's being brought through by science and manipulation of cellular creation. This is where he'll be brought through. They will stop short. In other words, take that shortcut. In other words, what the rabbit is famous for in your childlike fairy tales. Right? So by taking this shortcut and then dealing only with the cloned material, this is where you get furthermore evidence for the truth of the scripture that describes that this Antichrist will have no regard for women. And as you should always understand, that even in our most ancient annals of cryptic scientific ancient evidence of cloning, that even in ancient Sumerian times, these clones could not procreate. Okay, and then now we move forward into the future and we still see the same dilemma with a cloned creation, that it has no ability to procreate. This is where the true disregard for women will come from what we see as this masculine being. Okay, because he won't even be equipped for it in the material sense. In other words, he has really no plan to replicate anything other than himself. And you will understand. So you can see now that we have the rabbit that begins to show up. Now, also you've got to take this in perspective of the fox, in which Jesus Christ had quoted the murderous Jewish king Herod as being that old fox. and which always brings me to mind with Mig Fox Bat's original username. It's just so incredible. The Mig Fox Bat. And we know what the bat is relative for. That's the Prince of Darkness. So it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So here we have, in the same arrangement, we have the symbolage for the fox. Now we have the rabbit ears, okay? And these would now be those fox ears coming on down, once again, to the point of the fox's nose. As you see, Jesus Christ has known very well what he's talking about. It's just the problem of getting all you guys to see that, because you don't really have much faith in Jesus Christ. Therefore, you can't have any revelation in the truth that he's already given. Okay, you've already denied it. You don't see him as having truth. You only see the men that can interpret his life in the light of their own deception. And then you look to them for truth, and which now is the backward of that truth, which is the distortion of that truth. And then that's why so many people have no idea what's going on. So now if we come on back down here, let's think about the beetle, okay? The beetle would now, this would be the head of the beetle. This would be the outside shape of the body of the beetle that is culminating down to his two wings that are coming together in a sort of aerodynamic point, all right? That is a beetle. This beetle could be referenced as the ancient Egyptian scarab, which is also in reference of resurrection and immortality. As I said, this is what is the chief, influence for the choice of the name Beetle for the band Beatles. And as you know, locusts themselves are also considered a form or a subdivision of beetles. Now, let's come on down here, and since you understand the perspective of the beetle, let's let you know that it's really already all there of how they've done this. And there's your symbolage for the beetle on the back of the blue robe. On the back of the blue robe. So this is who is already here at the location, the moon location, and then this is who is bringing her there. Right? That's exactly right. Now you have to understand that the reds and the blues, as we saw in the movie Gangs of New York, are still working together under the same identity here. As you know, they are bringing those, what we believe is oppositions. To them, it's not. To them, in essence, they're using the good, they're using, or at least what they believe is good, they're using the good and the evil together. As they promote one form of evil, in essence, to keep you away from it, at the very same time, they're using that as a tool or a vehicle to get to their goal. So as I said, the true high hand of Ephraim, the real blue blood itself, is already on the moon. Already. And in this assemblage, that's who welcoming, that's who's coming. Okay, you gotta think about all of the other information that we've already brought to light in perspective of these redhead symbolisms. Now you gotta think about the red goes back to the red dragon also as well. It goes back to the red cross of the Knight Templars. As I said, they have been flip-flopping these things to confuse the identity from which direction they're coming from. But as I said, they have all been deceived. And whether you perceive them as being something separate or together, both sides is under deception. Both sides. So there's your little beetle for the shadow magic of the Cabala. That in essence is that rabbit hole. It is that mirror. Now, for how does this develop itself into the mirror? Well, because you're looking at basically a singular cell of yourself, of mankind, and thinking that that is the way for you to become God. It's actually the way for you to go away from that Christ-like manifestation of the image of God that was created in Genesis with the power to show forth love, mercy, forgiveness, compassion. You are actually looking away from the pinnacle of the creation of what you are in the dominion that you have on this world. And you are now looking back, in essence, to the briny deep in which these single cells have evolved from, the abyss itself. the abyss itself, that rabbit hole, that dark abyss, you know, where something that is already there is trying to get out of. But he just needs you to do that work by tempting you with this apple like temptation, which you should now know is the vehicle for his embryonic creation. Right? So you will understand how this becomes the candle. And then once we see in relationship to CERN, which is found the God particle, in essence, this lighting of the candle fulfilled in Luke chapter 11, verse 33, and then it fulfills in Zechariah chapter 4. In other words, these Babylonians, these descendants of Zerubbabel that are doing that work to light that candle, right? Well, here's that candle, okay? Because he there is that candle right there. This is the top of the candle that's being lit. But as you see, to light this candle, the whole world must be flipped upside down. And by default, now you understand who this angel is of Orion being hung upside down. All right. And now the common translation for this angel is Lucifer, okay, which furthermore is in semblance of Osiris. Okay. And then we understand that Horus now becomes the son of this darkened sun, and even fulfilling himself as the darkened right eye. Incredible. Which then the moon fulfills itself not only as the darkened right eye, but simultaneously as the left blinded material portion of the brain. All right. So there it all is right there. Every mystery that they got that they have to basically force their initiates to go through in steps and stages, ever causing themselves to lose their identity of what truth is and replace it with the identity of what the deception has become. It's right there. In essence, even the highest of these initiates, at least on this world, don't even realize that this is actually what's going on. They might now if they watch this channel. Okay? But then the highest of their orders, that wickedness, that spiritual wickedness in high places. In other words, Ephraim, who has become a multitude of nations on the dark side of the moon, I'm pretty sure he's aware. But yet he's gone so far in this, he now has to count on the promise of his God as granting him this material kingship on this world, as it's quoted in the Bible, for 1,000 years, give or take. And then, of course, their cycle of destruction and renewal starts all over again. And there's a whole lot more to that, guys. So, wow. All of this Cabala business is nothing more than a diagram of a singular cell, which will really show you the proof of what the great work is, as I've described it. And then it will fulfill what I told you here about this bun being cradled in the basket or the bun in the oven, which is that very same singular cell, which now you can begin to see as it manifests itself into the ears of the Playboy bunny, and which now will, in essence, bring itself to the point of the birth pains and travail. Now we have the devil appears in flesh, material program complete, new world program, right there. So we have the garden event. We've got man and woman created already in the image of God. And then, of course, the serpent emissary appears in representation of the fallen prince and his deception, offering that temptation. Of course, the idea is to get into the womb, to create the incubation, to create the gestation, to experience this time of procreation, to bring their plans to the full. And then we know to activate this, we see that it is the germ seed, the sperm cell, that activates this DNA program of the deception of hereditary lineage through the 2/3 genetic material that the females give up to the offspring over the male. And that is the sacred feminine. That is the reason why our females were chosen for this deceptive birthing program of the descendancy of the Nephilim, so that they would eventuate into the Elite God kings on this world that would freely already give up their seal of the Holy Ghost and accept the possession, the plans, and the intent of the fallen prince, therefore voluntarily giving up their dominion, giving up their seal, and giving up their cellular integrity. And that now by default of this, the will of these ancient fallen serpent kings, as they have preserved their phallic matter and their sperm specimens in these ancient tombs, has now been refound by those adepts that have the knowledge to be able to manipulate this into that material form that the fallen prince seeks to invade. It's right there. So the seeding of our world, age by age by age, until the devil appears in flesh. As we see, the garden event is growing from micro to macro. Pattern fractal runs its course, replicating its intended outcome. Okay? And then to understand what this mooring post here is, if you would like to call it, the NEB, in other words, the northern ecliptic pole, the heart of Draconis, and the northern vault of the sky, which is now being encircled by, in other words, ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies, ashes to ashes. They're all going to fall down. Okay? It's being encircled by these deluded people that have been knocked silly and that have prescribed themselves to the sacred feminine, which you will see astronomically now creates the celestial ecliptic revolution. Okay? So this now is the pole of the earth, as I said, that is tilted at 23 degrees, the axis of revolution of the earth, because it's been knocked over at a 23.5 degree tilt in its axis. That is the pole of the earth that is, in essence, encircling or drawing out on the northern vault of the sky, this circle around the heart of Draconis, or the eye of the heart of Draconis, which we now see becomes the apple of the eye of all these people that are involved in this sacred feminine philosophy. So this is where you get the axis, the navel, the pole, the fulcrum, the hollow, the troop, the band, creates the distortion, the sealing period now, 70 times 72, 72 the magical number of precession, gives us the Hebraic world age year of 5,040 years, which now times sevenfold gives us 36,288 BC. In other words, this now, in essence, can be seen as this distortion that could also be described as vibration that now turns into the decibel increase, which turns itself into the noise that now breaks the seal. In other words, the water breaks out the inhabitant. We have shattered vessels, no water. You know, that's the prophecy for them on the moon, right? So I'm going to go into a lot more detail here. But, you know, I needed you guys to at least get the groundwork for understanding all this. And then, when I come back, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll take a look at something where the Spirit is going to speak directly to you. I want you to see here, if we follow that same angle that we've been following, the direction of travel where the Jashin column is going, what does it say right here? Uh-oh. It says severity. You might not be able to see it too well, but I'm sure that there's many people that study this stuff that listen to me. They obviously know that's exactly what that means. Okay, that means severity. Now, severity is not too good of a word for certain of these people to associate that are going in that direction. And I'll tell you why. We've already seen it. We've already seen it. As I said, where the point of origin, where the sacred feminine comes from, where it evolves from, where it manifests from, right there at the Eden event, Genesis 6. Okay? Now they see themselves in future time as that special elect or that special select bride, right? Okay, this is the direction of travel. We see that it's the same temptation from micro to macro, as above, so to below, right, guys? All right? Here is your severity right there. And there's your severity right there. And when I come back, we'll read about what severity is in the fulfillment of what the ancient seers of the past and even the seer of the present has declared for false Israel. I'll be back.